Hi, everyone. A pleasure to see you today. My name is Farnia Fresnel. And for you joining us for the first time, I see some new faces. Our series is called Leadership COGS, and today our topic is leading without a blueprint, or your first. Now what? So I invite you to think back. When was the last time you were the first to do something? Maybe it was the first in your family to graduate, or maybe you were the first in your company to take on a new and challenging role. Maybe you were the first to break into an industry or the only voice with your perspective in a room. I invite you to type in the chat what comes to mind just thinking about being the first. Being first means no blueprint, and it's a privilege, and sometimes there's so much pressure. Today, the intent of our conversation is to explore what pioneers face and how it affects them and the people around them. And I hope to leave you today with a couple of tools to help you lead with confidence when you're the one charting in new territory. So, for those who don't know me, after years as a Fortune 100 global leader in tech and financial services and in consulting, I realized there was a gap in my understanding. I am a first. I'm first gen, and I'm a systems engineer, and I was trained in business process and technology, but my difference in culture caused me to struggle with a lot of unwritten rules that enable the best leaders and teams to thrive. So just about 12 years ago, I used what I knew when I studied and I got coached. And I launched the Lenserf group. And in that time, I've had the privilege of helping thousands of leaders across 44 countries to lean in and to stretch. So out of that is what developed COGS. So COGS is an acronym that I use to describe the four pillars of progressive performance. So we'll talk about that towards the end as we do a couple of short exercises. But I'd love to tell you this story. Many, many years ago, I started a job at a large multinational. And at the time, I was the youngest on that team. I had deep, deep, deep research knowledge in our area of expertise, but I didn't have the professional polish and the professional presence. One day, two of my colleagues, they were each at least 8 years into their careers. They invited me for a coffee, and I was thrilled. I was thrilled that they invited me. I was thrilled that I felt like I had a connection with people who were in my department. I was thrilled. And on the way back from that coffee, I noticed that the tone had shifted. They started asking me rapid fire questions about who I knew and how I got the job. I was really confused, to be honest with you. And my answer was disappointing to them because my answer was, oh, I went to a job fair and I just landed this job. And I'm really glad that, that's how I got here. They were really disappointed. And I could tell because they stopped talking to me. And if you can imagine, that walk back to our offices from getting that coffee was pretty quiet after that. As I thought later on about what might have happened, it became clear to me why they engaged with me. Politically, they needed to understand how I could have a role that was more senior than theirs. They needed to understand who might have been supporting me politically, and indirectly, they needed to know if they needed to care about me or anything that I was going to drive or lead. My area of expertise was very, very, very clear. I was the only person with that expertise in the department. But what they sought was the political clout. And when they realized that I wasn't covered by a senior leader, they were actually done. Like, oh, you're just here? Oh, okay. All right. So you're just here. Neither of them spoke to me again after that day. And this is an example of what some challenges that firsts or onlys sometimes face. The challenge of having competence that might be recognized, but colleagues and peers who are also asking, who's protecting you? Who's sponsoring you? And if the answer is no one, you might be left more isolated, not covered, not on a path to adventure, not in a place where people are excited to join you, but alone. So today we're talking about the S, or the stretch, that some leaders face when they're challenged with leading without a traditional blueprint. So let's jump in. So what are the problems that some pioneers face? First thing I would love to say is isolation. In my story, it sounded really lonely. Isolation and a lack of a blueprint, no guide, no path that has already been paved, where people have walked before, where there may be titles tied to your presence. There might be projects already aligned. There may be budget already aligned to support the work. There might be sponsors who know that they need to support that work. There is increased emotional and cognitive load because there is no blueprint. That's a challenge. It's a real challenge. Another challenge is scrutiny, increased scrutiny and doubt. So any move you take, every move you make is watched far more closely than any other move that anyone else is taking. You might be asked to prove yourself over and over again. Yet it was the very evidence of your capability that landed you in that place. So coming back to cognitive load, it feels heavy. It feels heavy when you've already proven yourself, yet you're again in a position to do so over and over and over again. Each time you may be introduced to someone new. Another challenge is political vulnerability. So without visible sponsors, pioneers might be excluded or even undermined. The work becomes less about your expertise and more about navigating invisible power dynamics. So I told you the story earlier about how I realized there was a gap in my understanding, like where I thought I had competence, what I was missing was that other lens, that lens about how politics work and how things are done. And things are done in traditional environments, not all environments, but in traditional environments, which is what I was in. Another problem that pioneers often face is this: tokenism and pressure to represent something. So when you're an only, you, being that only can make you feel like you're carrying the weight of representation of everything that seems like you on your shoulders, and you're carrying that weight for an entire group or groups, depending on how many lenses of only you might be walking in. That's heavy. It's heavy. It's heavy. It's very real. And feel free to drop in the chat if you've ever felt this way. So I'd love to consider for a moment, what are the impacts, right? So what are the impacts? I have a little battery here. Drain, 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 drain. What is the impact on the pioneer? Is drain. When you're always on and you're always vigilant, you're experiencing decision fatigue. And chances are, after an extended period of time, you might not be engaged, as engaged with your mission. Or you might feel like, wow, I was excited when I was first presented with this, but right about now, it's not feeling so great. And I don't know if I want to stay here because the charge in paving this path is too difficult. Now, what about the team? So that's the pioneer. That's the first. That's the only. What about the team? So teams are in a precarious position because there might be a little bit of distrust and questioning why this person, why them, why now? What's happening here that would relegate us to being in this environment with this outsider, this person who has come from somewhere else, this person who is different in many ways? So, just like what my colleagues may have been feeling years ago, why is this outsider who's younger aligned to this important work? Who wanted her here? But at the same time, colleagues may also be experiencing missed opportunities because you're defensive and because you're not seeing that there may in fact be value there that might be different than what you know, but valuable nonetheless. There might be missed opportunities to learn a unique perspective and add that to what you're already bringing. So colleagues stand to lose out. When you think about the organization that likely recruited whatever's different, innovation will stall. It does stall when pioneers leave. It takes a unique kind of person to say yes to being uncomfortable consistently for what might be an extended period of time. Like if you're saying yes to that, you're different, right? Now, there are statistics, many, 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 many statistics that tie to how diversity increases innovation, how diversity increases profitability and ROI, how diversity enhances problem solving and decision making. And that means that retaining your pioneering leaders has to be a long-term strategic business imperative, not a social imperative. This isn't because it's cute. This is because it's required. So, so in an organization, what are the impacts? Well, there are cultural risks. You see, if pioneering leaders aren't supported and there is no cushion or no welcome or no energy behind their presence, what you may find is that there's also a disincentivizing of others from stepping forward at challenging times when you can't really afford for your people to start stepping back. So if being that pioneering leader is not supported and they're left to flounder on their own, and that's how the organization is welcoming or not welcoming that role, what you might find again is people stepping back because they don't want to be associated with that impacts. And I wonder if any of you have seen any of that happening in your workplaces. So what can we do? Well, what can we do to support pioneering leaders when you're the first, when you're the only? First, it starts with I. If you are, in fact, one of the pioneering leaders, the first, the only in a place, there are plenty of things you can do first to recharge your battery. First, you can build allies intentionally. If you're doing something for the first time, no one knows, but people have their own areas of expertise. Build allies intentionally. Don't wait for support. Don't wait for a runway to be paved in front of you. Map out who holds the influence and go out of your way to cultivate authentic relationships in those places. Anchor your expertise and keep showing how your contribution adds value and builds value in the places you have the privilege of being. The other thing is practice boundary setting. So you don't owe everyone full access to your personal story to earn credibility. So me walking down the hallway and describing how I went to a job fair and to land the job, and yes, they hired me from a job fair. I didn't owe anyone that story. I didn't owe anyone anything. So ensure that as a pioneering leader, what you can do is practice the boundary setting. If telling your story on repeat diminishes how you feel about yourself or reduces you to something small that is subject to additional judgment, you don't owe anyone that. You don't owe anyone anything. For teams, for the teams around pioneering leaders, what you can do is this: shift yourself from the judgment and suspicion into a place of curiosity. Ask yourself, what can I learn from this person? Somebody, somewhere saw something in this person, and just hold that as real and valid, and shift from suspicion to curiosity. Acknowledge expertise openly and normalize celebrating those contributions without attaching them to politics, which is a temptation. I know. You think about the organizations. What can an organization do to make the space a little more welcoming? Well, first, provide visible sponsorship. So if in my case, it wasn't obvious who was supporting me or why I was there in that moment. Provide visible sponsorship. Pair your pioneers with senior champions. Create peer networks. So onlys thrive when they're not alone. Again, it's lonely being an only, but onlys thrive when they're not alone. As an organization, you can also normalize new. So if the culture of your workplace is such that anything new is regarded with suspicion, then that's an opportunity to change. Normalize new, embed the pioneers' work into systems so it's not dependent on just one person, but it becomes just how we operate. So, so let's get in action. I'm inviting you here. You joined COGS today. I want to make this worth your time. So let's use COGS. What does the C stand for? C stands for celebration. And as we talk about pioneering leaders, we're talking about celebrating the courage to be first and marking that progress. So I invite you to think about one moment in the last 30 days when you might have broken new ground, or you might have shown up as the first or the only. Write down one word that captures how you felt in that moment. For ownership. So, for pioneering leaders, what that might sound like is encouraging those who are leading without a blueprint to continue to own their expertise because their difference is their key. And honestly, that difference is the key for the rest of the organization, too. As the pioneering leader, take ownership for your emotions, recognize when you're triggered, and name it. Like, oh, such and such is asking me this again, asking me for how I got here again. Recognize if you're triggered and name it, and shift from reacting to, oh, to responding with intention. This is what I'm doing, and this is the impact. This will be the impact for everyone should we be successful. So let's practice. I invite you to finish this sentence. The unique value that I bring as a pioneer is, fill in your blank. The unique value that you bring as a pioneer is what? Fill in that blank. Now let's talk about G for the glue that can lead to our greatest growth. Build intentional connections and support structures for your pioneers. Build trust, enhance trust through empathy and presence and psychological safety by listening. Those things support getting through the glue. So let's practice. I invite you all who are here, made this commitment to be here, to think of one relationship or one system that feels like glue for you right about now. It might be sticky. It might be slowing you down or holding you in place. You were hired, you are in whatever place to lift off, to accelerate, to ignite. But there's something holding you in place. What is it? And what's one small shift that you could make starting today to move you from glue to growth? Then lastly, we're at our S for stretch. So this looks like development that extends beyond the current moment. So I hear a lot of people talk about AI this, AI that. That's the current moment. It's going to enable, it's going to activate, it's going to accelerate. But what is development beyond this current moment that helps first grow into broader leadership? So they're just not in this thing that's going to be forgotten about perhaps in 2 or 3 years or once it's been implemented, but they're going to grow into broader leadership. And the last exercise for today is this. My stretch right now is, and fill in that blank, and then one resource or one ally that I can lean on is, and fill in your blank. And if you're struggling to identify who belongs in that second blank, that's your work. Because just like I was unsupported, and it was clear when I couldn't say, oh, this person wanted me here. When you're unsupported, you're setting yourself up for a challenge, a significant challenge. And as an organization, if you leave your pioneers unsupported, you are also setting yourself up for a challenge. All right, so we're going to wrap for today. And as we wrap, just remember, being first is exhilarating and it's challenging, but it's more than breaking ground. It's about building pathways that other people can follow. And as we wrap up today, I'm going to ask you to think, when I'm the first, how am I creating a blueprint for others? So if I come here and there's no blueprint, I have the opportunity to make that the last time there's no blueprint. How am I creating a blueprint so that whoever comes next doesn't experience what I just experienced? That's first. And when someone else is first, how am I supporting them? Because if you are in fact a pioneering leader, you're not the first and you won't be the last first. So when somebody else has that position, how are you supporting them? All right. So thank you so much for joining today. It's wonderful to see new faces. I'll be back in just about 2 weeks, and then we'll be talking about leader branding basics. So branding is a big topic nowadays, personal branding, business branding, all kinds of branding, but we're going to be talking about leader branding basics. As always, thanks for being here. Take care and be well.